Hello everyone and welcome back. Now, I think it's a fair statement to say that there are many Twilight fans who have seen the movies before actually going on to read the books, and that's okay. It happens. It doesn't matter what way you find the books or the story in general, as long as you enjoy your journey with the Twilight story. Now, if you've only ever seen the movies and not read the books, then you'll still be familiar with the tracker vampire known as James. Now, James literally wanted to hunt Bella to the ends of the earth as soon as he caught her scent. Now, something I think the movie fails to truly emphasize is the fact that James was an extremely powerful vampire. He even hunted other vampires for sport and was over 200 years old by the time he encountered the Cullens and began his pursuit of Bella. Now, in the movie, he bites Bella and then is literally just held there while the fire is lit to burn his body after they destroy him. He literally stands there, doesn't resist much, and then he's just smashed into pieces like he was absolutely nothing, like he was no threat, no challenge. It just wasn't believable for me, and a really poor ending for James. In the books, James is absolutely terrifying, and as this video title reads, he was the sole reason that Alice Cullen actually became a vampire, and I'm gonna tell you why. As I mentioned, in the books, James was terrifying, powerful, and possibly one of the best tracker vampires to ever exist, only second to Dimitri, who could track any vampire from any point all over the world. His whole life as a human was tracking and hunting, something he learned from a very young age. This skill obviously enhanced itself after he became a vampire, and James became well known for his abilities, but most importantly, a vampire not to cross. Now, I mentioned already that he hunted vampires for sport as well as humans. That's actually how he met his mate Victoria. He was hunting her for months, but Victoria's talent was evasion in itself, which counteracts James' incredible tracking skills. This intrigued him, and due to their counteracting abilities, he made her his mate. So, the reason I spend some time speaking about James's abilities and his past is because, without doing that, for me anyway, if I didn't already know, I'd struggle to understand how he could be the reason that Alice became a vampire. It's like, James? Really? Anyway, you'll have probably noticed that I've been saying he's the reason Alice became a vampire, and that's because he is. But he's not the vampire who turned her. You see, Alice was similar to Bella while human. That similarity being her scent was intoxicating, meaning her blood would be euphoric to taste. This was a rarity for vampires and why Edward struggled so much to be around Bella initially. Now, Alice already began having premonitions as a human, glimpses and flashes of the future. Not to the extent it was when she was a vampire, where the vision would be prolonged, but enough to gain insight from them. This is when she's seen tracker vampire James. She's seen him catch her scent while in the area and begin a hunt to claim his prey. Before this, Alice was placed into a mental institution by her father after she discovered her father was behind her mother's death in order to remarry another woman. There, Alice was befriended by a vampire worker who warmed to her character and looked out for her as best he could, trying to shield her from the inhumane treatments that were used in the asylum at the time. For example, Alice was subjected to electric shock therapy several times a day in order to suppress the visions, as they are considered a mental instability. Alice and the vampire worker became so close that the vampire looked upon Alice as a daughter. When Alice's visions of this tracker vampire James began to increase, the vampire worker was left with no choice but to change her himself in order to protect her. This was basically signing his own death warrant, as it immediately halted James's senses and intuitions. Alice's scent disappeared completely, but what remained was James's desire to hunt her because he could remember the scent. The only thing is, he wouldn't get his prize now. Alice was a vampire. This was incredibly frustrating for James, as his only real sense of satisfaction came when he successfully hunted down his prey. So James then made the vampire worker pay for interfering with his business when he killed him on their first encounter, as the latter tried to distract him while Alice was in transition. That brings me to my next question. If James had such a detrimental impact on Alice, why didn't she recognize him during their encounter at the family baseball game in the Twilight book? Why didn't she show any sort of unease? If she recognized James but kept it to herself, would Edward not have sensed the spike in Alice's mind through the fear instilled in the mere sight of James? Well, there's actually a couple of reasons that we can examine that could hopefully explain that. Now, for starters, Edward can only sense the fear in someone when he attempts to read their mind. It doesn't just jump into his mind like a red alert kind of thing. At the time the book was written, including its 3 successors, there was no mention of Alice ever having any sort of encounter with James. Now, this was because we didn't find out until the book Midnight Sun that Alice had such a troubled past and what really happened with her childhood and how she was changed into a vampire. So Stephanie Meyer didn't really incorporate that into the original story, which is why we see the encounter with James and the Cullen family pan out like it did. For the additional information we get in Midnight Sun, it's explained that Jasper, who had the power to manipulate the emotions of others, was cloaking Alice's emotions while simultaneously controlling James's emotions. James barely noticed her until the end of his obsessive hunt with Bella began, just as it did with Alice all those years ago. Now, I'll be honest guys, I'm not one for authors going back and adding new information to an already established story, but I was pleasantly surprised to read about Alice's past and how it incorporated James. I love the character of James in general. I kind of thought it would have been better to have James continue into the New Moon book instead of stretching Victoria's vengeance story across 2 books, especially New Moon, which was a struggle to get through at certain points, I won't lie. It was just Bella being in pain for half a book. I think the movie actually reflects that pretty accurately if I'm honest. Anyway, I've said this several times, Twilight has such potential in terms of this origins and backstory of vampires. It focuses far too much on Edward and Bella's story, which is quite a shame because more room could be made for a wider tale, but maybe we might see something a little different when the Twilight TV series is released. It gives the room that we're looking for to find out more information on the characters we're looking for. Anyway guys, I will leave it there for today's video. I really hope you enjoyed it, and let me know if you were actually aware of Alice and James's connection before this video. Thanks for watching guys, have a good one, and I'll see you all for the next video.